Thanks, Stephanie. I just wanted to say thank you all for being here today and taking part in this presentation. I've learned so much in the use of computer-based testing, and I'm really looking forward to sharing my knowledge with you. So my name is Michelle Cruz. I've been at Oregon Health and Sciences University School of Nursing for a little over 6 years now. I'm currently the program associate for the nurse midwifery and pediatric nurse practitioner programs. And the reason why I got involved is because we actually piloted ExamSoft in the nurse midwifery program and used it for our comprehensive exam. And we have rave reviews about it. And I can't wait to share why that is. So just kind of going over the abstract. I'm not going to read that, but hoping you're in the correct presentation. I'll be talking about implementing security settings for computer-based testing. One thing to note is that it's actually going to be a little bit of a tutorial as far as translating faculty preferences into computer-based testing. So the topics that I'm going to cover in the session are history and background. So I'll kind of go over a little bit of the OHSU School of Nursing background in computer-based testing and what we've done in the past, why we've decided to use computer-based testing, and reasons why we utilize CBT versus paper exams. The types of questions and formats that we run into most often, kind of going over the capabilities and functionalities of ExamSoft, the faculty exam preferences, so things I run into most often as far as what faculty request out of their exams, and then also translating that into computer-based testing. I'll touch on administering exams to distance students, but I actually have a future presentation on that, which I'll give you more details about later. So a little background for you. Some of our programs were already utilizing CBT via Sakai, which is our online course management system. It's really similar to Blackboard. We had others using written exams and having it graded via Scantron. And the reason why the push was there to move forward was because our Scantron machine just kept malfunctioning. It really became costly, and we found that the feedback wasn't the best as far as student or question performance. And it's just pretty time consuming to have to scan all of those Scantrons. So what we did is we went ahead and moved forward and implemented computer-based testing via ExamSoft and Sakai across all programs within the entire school. And that was actually implemented this last fall, so we required all students to have laptops at that point. So why computer-based testing? I know there's a push for this everywhere now. The analytics are amazing as far as, you know, it depends on how you utilize ExamSoft in particular, but we actually categorized our questions, and that gave us more detailed results on overall student performance and question exam performance. It's much easier to make modifications after the fact versus on a Scantron. So if you decided you wanted to throw out a question or have a question be a bonus question instead, or actually include more than one answer, that could be done after the actual exam, and all the scores are recalculated automatically, which is really nice. Adaptability for distance education. So ExamSoft doesn't require you to use the internet during the actual exam. It's only needed when you're downloading and uploading the exam. So it's really nice for those at a distance in rural areas to be able to save that time and upload their exam ahead of time, take it without using the internet, and then uploading it later. Maintenance of electronic records and historical performance. So it's really easy to be able to look back and see how a question performed in the past, or how students performed in the past, to see how that cohort is doing as they're progressing through their program of study. And also, most certification exams are now provided via CBT, so it's nice to get them used to that from the very beginning. So types of questions and formats. This is pretty straightforward. You'll run into multiple choice, matching, case studies, essays, and true and false. All of this can be translated into computer-based testing. I'm just going to go over some ExamSoft setting capabilities just so you get a background of what that looks like. The security options you'll see here, there's secure, block internet on non-secure assessments. You can randomize the sequence or the choices and create time limits. There's also a functionality where you're able to drag and drop some attachments, so PDFs of case studies or images, and I'll go into more detail on that as well. And then more bells and whistles. You've got all these options that you're able to use during an exam. There's also an iPad function, which we haven't delved into quite yet, but we're looking into that for the future for our school. And then scoring, this is pretty straightforward as well. Display scores on exit. You're able to display the scores right away to the students, or you can hold off on that after you've done an item analysis. So, faculty preferences. These are just the faculty preferences that we run into most often. I kind of wanted to lay it out here and kind of start thinking. It's kind of hard to go from paper to electronic testing, and so it's nice to have something like this, kind of a tutorial to teach you and start getting you to think about, okay, how is this going to translate when it's on the computer, and what's the best use to do that? So one thing I ran into quite a bit was incorporating case studies. A lot of times our faculty had case studies printed and would have the students do the test via Sakai. Another thing would be allowing students to access resources saved on their laptop, but restrict them from accessing the internet. Is that something that's possible? And it is. That's a setting you can modify as well. Randomizing question and answer sequence for each student. So some faculty were concerned that students can look at each other's laptops, and I'll address that in a second. Using images for specific questions and or throughout the exam. So you're able to use images, which is really nice. I guess the biggest difference is having to print those images so then students could see it clearly, and also having it on the computer, and I'll touch on that as well. If you want something that's an open note, open book, and allows students to access the internet during the exam, that's also possible via ExamSoft. Even though it does seem that it's incredibly secure, this is also an option if it's something that you prefer for your student. So going into incorporating case studies. For instance, I want the students to refer to a case study for several questions within my exam. We found it to be pretty cumbersome to print out copies and then have them, and kind of counterintuitive, and to have them take the exam on a computer but also need paper copies. So there is a way that you could attach the case study as a PDF for each question associated with the case study. This is kind of a visual on how you do that. This is within the question itself. You're able to drag and drop the attachment there, which is really nice, because then the student can pull it up. And one thing that you have to note is that the students will need to make sure they have the latest version of Adobe Acrobat Reader installed on their computers to view the PDF attachment. This is just an example of a question we created in a sample test we required all students to take to ensure that they're good for test day. So it was nice to do this. So then we knew if the students didn't have Adobe Acrobat Reader, they wouldn't be able to pull this up, and that's something they could load beforehand. So that's a way to do that. Using multiple case studies. So there's a way to do this. Say, for instance, the faculty wants to use multiple case studies for just some of the questions within the exam. The solution would be to number each case study and combine them all into one PDF document and attach it to the entire exam. For each question that's related to the case study, remember to refer the student to the number of that case study. And this will make more sense once we look at the image here. So you would attach the case study there, and this is actually on the page where you're creating the assessment, so it's not within the question, it's within the actual assessment. If you decide to shuffle your questions, you'll want to make sure that you put something on at the beginning of each question associated with that case study to make sure they look at the right one. So if you have, A, B, and C case study, you'll want to make sure that this is there, because when the questions are shuffled, it's going to be different for everybody. So that's something to note. Okay, so allowing access to save resources and restrict the internet. So one thing, one misconception that our faculty had when we told them about ExamSoft was, well, what if I want my students to access resources on their laptop? Are they not able to do that? Well, they actually are. So say they want them to save some resources and handouts on their laptop, but they don't want them to go on the internet. What you'll do is disable the secure option and enable block internet on non-secure assessment. So this is what that looks like. If you look there to the left, I check the box that says block internet on non-secure assessments. So one thing to note is if you do want them to have resources, to make sure that the students have documents saved on their computer and not anywhere they need to access the internet for. So we have run into students that saved it in their Google Docs or in the box, and they'll need internet access to access those. So it's best to let them know, save it on a folder on your desktop. That way it'll be easier for you to pull up during the exam. Okay. So some faculty were concerned that their students can look at each other's laptop screens during the exam. And there's different ways you can do this. You could have the students sit so they're not able to do that, having them on opposite sides of the table where the backs of their laptop are facing each other so they're not able to see each other's screens. Or you can randomize the questions and have a live proctor in the room monitoring. And this is really easy. This is the page where you're actually creating the assessment. You'll see right there that I put secure, randomize sequence, and randomize all choices. One thing to note about that is if you do decide to randomize the choices, you have to make sure that you rewrite some questions if you have any that are like A, B, and C and all of the above, just because when it does shuffle, that's not going to make sense. So we had faculty change that to all of these or all choices are pertinent or correct. Using images. So this is one that was incredibly useful when we had our comprehensive exam because we had a lot of fetal monitoring strips that were pretty difficult to read as a scanned image. So what you can do with ExamSoft is embed the image within the question itself. This is pretty straightforward. There's a little add picture there. And the nice thing about this is you can actually zoom in. So as a student taking the exam, you have the ability to zoom into the image and really look at the detail of each image, which is great. It's, I think, better than printing it and having those documents on the side. And you kind of maintain the integrity of the exam, not having paper copies of partial parts of the exam. So this is really nice to have it all in one. So last but not least, allowing internet access during the exam. This is possible. If you had an exam that was open note, open book, and you want them to be able to go on the internet, that's still possible. What you'll do is you'll choose the non-secure mode. This will enable students to use the internet during the exam, so it won't close up their computer and they'll be able to veer outside of their testing window. And that is what that looks like. So I didn't check any boxes. I went ahead and checked randomized sequence just to be precautious. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It's not going to be secure, and you're not going to block the internet. So computer-based testing for distance students. This is a little bit different because we actually assign proctors for those at a distance. So their proctors were able to be, someone that works at the library, someone at a community college. And with that, we give them some documentation and some papers to sign. And then we actually administer the exam by sharing the unique password to start to the distance proctors. And sometimes we'll send this via email, but normally it would be a phone call 15 minutes prior to the start of the exam. We do ask our distance students to have the exam uploaded ahead of time, just so they don't run into any hang-ups if there's no internet access where they're at. And all the setting modifications that I discussed previously are available for those at a distance. So that's really nice. You don't have to recreate an exam for them. You can keep those same settings. I actually have an upcoming webinar on the details of administering exams at a distance, and here is more information about that. It's called Creating a Secure Testing Environment for Distance Education Programs. And I hope to have some of the same attendees there to get more insight on that. Just a summary of what I kind of went over. I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions because I know that there's going to be more ideas as far as translating paper exams into CBT. It's really nice because the system can be catered to various needs and is pretty dynamic in the way you use it. So thank you so much for taking part in this presentation. I hope that you were able to take something from it as you're thinking about continuing or using computer-based testing via ExamSoft. Let me know if you have questions.
Thanks so much, Michelle. We are going to go ahead and open the forum up for a Q&A. If you have questions, now would be the time to pose them to the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel, which should be on the right-hand side of your screen. We've had a couple come in already, Michelle, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump in if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, great. First question is, what were some of the biggest hurdles that you experienced, especially when it comes to faculty and student buy-in?
Sure. So this is, there definitely was a lot of challenges with that because our faculty were so used to having paper exams. Once it was nice because I was able to show them what we've done in the midwifery program with our categorized questions and the feedback that we've received. And I feel like once they saw that, there was definitely more buy-in. We created support systems for our faculty so that they had resources as far as being able to come to me or other program associates and really get that support, because I feel like that was needed initially because they were kind of afraid of, well, you're taking our paper exams and the Scantron, and now what are we supposed to do, And so I feel like you just need to really support that change and give them access to resources as they're transitioning. Also, I think the analytics spoke for itself as far as being able to share the results with the students and how you share it. Sharing all the bells and whistles of what the potentials of testing via computer-based testing, I think, was the biggest push for them to go ahead and move forward.
Okay, great. Next question is, have you seen any cost savings associated with this type of process?
If I were to do kind of an overview of how much time staff had used in scanning Scantrons and how much time faculty put into recreating exams over and over again instead of having a steady library of questions that they could pull from, I bet that I can probably figure out that we've saved quite a bit of money down the line. And initially, it's definitely a cost, requiring our students to have laptops and doing and hiring people to support the system. But at the end of the day, it's a lot more streamlined and a lot easier down the line, but it is a lot of work coming forward at the beginning.
Okay, next question. How is using the picture icon to attach a scanned photo different from attaching it at the side of the Create Question page?
You know, it's not really that much different, I think, because you're able to zoom in a PDF as well. Just because we have a kind of a library of questions, we like to keep it within the question itself, you know, but you're able to attach it also as a PDF. I guess the thing that you might run into is if your students don't take a practice exam ahead of time and they pull up the PDF and realize, oh, I don't have Adobe Acrobat Reader, then that would be a hang up there.
Okay, next question. Are students required to bring a device or do you issue them?
The students are required to bring their laptops with them. We provide the room, which is normally their usual classroom, which is great because we don't have to book a computer lab for them. Because we required it this last fall, we also required them to download ExamSoft and have that available to them when it was time to take tests.
Okay, next question is, do you feel a process of this nature requires a full-time admin position, or is it something that can be supported by the faculty?
I would say absolutely initially you want someone full-time. I actually, when we first started this, we didn't realize how big it would be. And I was the main point person, but I also was supporting 2 other programs, and that was something I really pushed for. And so what they did was divided my time and gave me more time to do ExamSoft support versus, and they hired someone to help me with my work normally. I definitely would recommend having one full-time person devoted to this transition if it's a transition and supporting it, at least initially. And then after that, it seems that faculty are pretty good at learning and doing it themselves.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have for you, Michelle. Thank you so much for your time and for your presentation. Thank you to everybody for joining us this afternoon. We know how busy your days are, and we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to participate. Just as a refresher, this webinar has been recorded, and a link to the recording will be available to everybody via email within the next couple of business days. Also, when you close out of the session, you will get a pop-up that will be a quick 5-question survey. We would appreciate everybody taking the time to fill that out. And again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you stopping by, and everybody have a great afternoon.